for waiting. Sorry about that.
I think it's page 2 is your crib sheet.
All right, you guys have been patient. Should we call the meeting to order at 6:04 and do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens forum before the approval of the agenda? That's what I have in there.
Yeah, I think that's how we have it on the working session.
Okay.
That way, if there's something that's brought up at the forum, you can address it on the agenda if you want.
Okay. Mr. Browse, you here for saying anything, or?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Anybody else? Moving on. The agenda as presented, do you have any changes to it that I should be aware of?
No.
Okay. So I need a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Motion by Alice. Hang on, let me get my pen back in there. Motion by Alice, second by Robida. Sorry. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Do we have any board presenters? Okay. Written communications?
The only one I have is I had a concerned parent email before the meeting with some of the recent cases that they're concerned about what's happening in the elementary and are supportive of moving towards masking, but that's the only email I've had on the topic.
And that's not something you want to necessarily read out to the board, or?
I'm gonna consult with MSBA because the person asked for anonymity, and I can't technically read it out loud or email it to the school board. I could do a summary. So that, at this point, I have to make sure we're not violating any open meeting laws. So.
But you could summarize something if I asked a general question, which is, was the information that this parent presented in the letter accurate?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't just stuff that was picked up on Facebook or somewhere, you know, from her children or something, but.
No, it was just in support of, mentioned last year, getting through the year with fewer transmission cases because of the mitigation. And the person has 2 students in the junior and senior high right now, and has a spouse that's a staff member.
Okay. Well, noted then, and I would appreciate tracking down from the attorneys, because I think we'll probably get more of that over the course of the next several weeks.
Yep.
You know, both sides of it, just because things are going to change, obviously. Mm-hmm. All right. How about old business? We're talking about a COVID review here specifically.
Yep, and that's on your next page. Today, each Monday, I do get a hold of public health, and today I met with Kay Shell, and Dr. Cole was also there for part of it. The positivity rate that I have posted here, there's different places that you can get data, of course. There's the Minnesota Department of Health site, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I'm not sure how to access it publicly in case looking on that, but that's what they use at their facility because it's a little more up-to-date information. So that's where these numbers come from, and it's for the time frame of August 25th through September 7th. And as we get into this, we'll decide what set of numbers that we're going to consistently use. But this is Kay felt is a little more timely than what she gets from the state. So Lake of the Woods is at 9.6%, Roseau is at 7.2%, Couchiching's at 4.4%, and Beltrami is at 11.1%. And I did get some more information from Kay that I have in here, but I haven't had time to go through it. But I will get that into a packet and send it out to the school board and get it posted on some other data that we might want to take into account. The weekly counts for Lake of the Woods County, August 22nd through the 28th was up 2, so it's actually 10. August 29th through September 4th was at 8, and September 5th through the 11th is at 8. And it was reported that there were 18 tests sent out last Friday, so that number could drastically change when those results come back.
When they sent out from the clinic or from here or?
Not from here. Those would have been through public health and CHI,
Okay.
clinic. Known active cases within the last 7 days at the county were at 9. And again, some of those numbers could change with those tests that were sent out on Friday. Lake of the Woods School, we're at 4. We have 2 positive cases in grade 4, excuse me. Both of those positives come out of the same classroom. And we have 2 positive cases in grade 5, both positives, again, come out of the same classroom. So there is a high probability that we have had our first confirmed case or cases that can be directly contributed to classroom school type exposure. Last year, with our full mitigation practices in place, we didn't have any firm confirmation that there was a transmission that took place in the classroom. Most, I would say 90-80% of the time when we did the contact tracing, it could be traced back to the house or different things, sporting events, but we really didn't have where we could say, yeah, that probably was an exposure and transmission within a classroom setting. So that's a little bit of a different direction we're going compared to last year and this previous spring. So also in discussion with Dr. Kuo, we talked about severe illness and hospitalization for kids under 12. And he said under the older version of COVID-19, it was at 0.8%. It's at 2.2% for the Delta variant. And with that in mind, we currently have 262 students in pre-K through 6. If we follow the national trend and the statistics on that, we could possibly be looking at 5 or 6 students who could possibly come down with severe illness and need for hospitalization. And I'm not bringing that up as an alarmist. I just want us to look at the data, look at the statistics, and look at when we're making decisions, this is what the numbers kind of support. So there is a bit of a change with the new variant as far as its impact on student health. Vaccine data, percentage by county population, 12 years and older, we're at 58.5%, Roseau's at 53.6%, Hooch County is at 58.5% also, and Beltrami County is at 56.4%. 16 years and older, we're still at 61.3%, Roseau is at 55.9%, Couchiching County is at 60.1%, and Beltrami remains at 58%. And then for our 65 and older category, we're up 0.2% for Lake of the Woods County. And then Roseau's up 0.6%, up to 85.6% for that age group. And Couchiching County and Beltrami stayed at 83 and 88 respectively. So total population, Lake of the Woods County is at 51.1%. I think nationally we're getting close to 75%, so we're lagging compared to the nation. Roseau's at 45.2%, Couchiching County's at 51.7%, and Beltrami County's at 46.6%. And some of the information I have that I haven't had a chance to put together does take a little bit of look at comparison of those that are non-vaccinated to vaccination and the impact of that.
What did you say the national was of the total?
I thought it was 74 point something I saw in the news this morning. It's getting close to 3/4 of the population at the national level. And I forget what Minnesota's at.
Yeah,
I think Minnesota's a little bit higher than that, statewide. Or am I getting the state and the national combined?
We have the state and the national turnaround.
Okay.
No, I think Minnesota's higher.
Minnesota's doing pretty good. We're behind
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
I was just curious.
So I shouldn't deviate from my notes. Sorry about that. Couple things as far as my recommendation. My recommendation is to transition into the moderate or yellow tiered health and safety procedures that we can go over in a little bit here. And I kind of just did a bullet point on the main things that this would do. So we continue to strongly encourage masking of all persons in the school building. And we continue to push for full compliance and masking on school transportation. Assign seating and cohort grouping as much as possible in the elementary. Increase testing opportunities to students and staff using Q and Patel pooled testing when appropriate. And I plan on drafting a letter to send out to parents, informing them of the testing options and what releases that we would need to have. And we're going to offer kind of a very general release for parents that are fine with us doing screening testing. So they get to sign it for the year and they don't have to do it every time. Otherwise they could have the option of having to sign it every time. So that will be going out in the next day or so. Increase health monitoring of all students and staff. Health monitoring stations are going to be at all the main entrances once again. And we're going to strongly encourage everyone to do a check. And we're going to send out letters to parents asking for compliance with submitting their health screenings on a daily basis through Parent Review Portal on Synergy. And start getting everyone back into that habit of checking temps and symptoms and communicating that with the school. Start that process of getting that back into practice.
You just said we had a whole bunch that actually called in sick.
Yep.
So parents are actually
Actually, yeah. And that
Doing-
parents, yep,
screens and keeping them home.
yep.
So I mean,
Did we get any kind of
I
estimate?
couldn't find the sheets, I tried to get a hold of Tracy, but there's 22 lines on a sheet.
Okay.
And like 1.5 sheets filled today.
Okay. So I'll have to go back and confirm how many called in with saying
We have
Susie has symptoms, we're gonna keep them home. But that was, she was kinda frazzled right away this morning with all the calls and stuff, but that was on a good side, that parents are aware and,
yeah.
30, around 30, some 35.
But it doesn't mean they were all sick, some kids
No.
could have had appointments.
Oh,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I know that, but, you
Yeah.
know.
but that was something she mentioned when I came in this morning, that there was quite a few calls. And there is a bug going around, kinda like the fall
Flu, cold
flu,
thing.
kind of allergy type stuff. And some people have gotten tested and reported back negatives, but that doesn't mean they're all negative, so.
Right. So then those people that called in, are they quarantined now because they called in and had symptoms until
I
they
would
get
have to
tested?
check case by case with Tiara on that.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because that's what I.
Yep, usually if they have symptoms, we want them to stay home until
They're symptom
they've
free for
had
24
either
hours.
symptom-free or they've taken a test and ruled it
negative.
out, yeah.
And do we have the Q test yet here? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
We are hoping to start some of those tests tomorrow morning, in fact.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Because
any other?
then parents could bring their kids and just do that.
Yep, and we're trying to figure out if they're symptomatic, we're gonna try to either have a spot where we go to them, and we gotta look at carrying the tester out if that's, or we'll have a spot in the building, so they can come in, get tested, go return to their vehicle, wait the 20 minutes or whatever, and then hopefully the kids can
school.
jump out of the car, come in and go to school, and if it's a positive, then we'll send them home.
Okay.
Tara's asking for a drive-through window, and I'm not sure we could punch a hole anywhere right now, so
That would be
we're not
nice.
quite
huh?
that prepared
kinda
for it, but
nice.
it would be nice. So I'll have to sit down and figure out where the best place is for people to drive in and arrange that. And we'll have 2 to 3 people that will be trained and able to give that test. So it's not just Tiara.
Were we able to get more than one? I know that was the hope.
We've ordered another 400 more with 2 more testers, or readers, or whatever.
The Q test.
But yeah, the actual reader that it plugged into, we only got one of those originally.
Okay.
So I ordered, because you have to order 200 tests to get one reader. So that's what we got initially, and then I ordered 400 more tests and 2 more readers. So then it would be 3 at a time.
How long does that take to get to
Each
your-
one takes 20 minutes to
Not
actually
arrival,
read.
shipping?
Oh, they
2 to
said
3
that
weeks.
they had planned on shipping them out by like the 16th, I think.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's when they'll
The
be shipped
date's
out.
Yeah.
17th, right?
So they'd be here
Yeah.
next
By
week,
probably.
up and running.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not sure where they come from, but.
And one more thing under my recommendation is a discussion tonight on the possibility of having all elementary students and staff masking while in their classrooms as a first step before going school-wide. And I'm just anticipating what we're seeing in 2 classrooms in the first 6 days of school, not even that, that we're gonna get to a point where we're gonna have to make a decision. And if we wait too long, it makes the decision not as time as it should be, so. My rationale for elementary students is they're our most vulnerable as far as not being eligible for vaccination at this time. So, and I think they can have the hardest impact when they're not in the school building as far as their learning and social emotional. And I know there's arguments against masking, but I think when we look back to last year when we had all the mitigation and not just the masking, we did, in my opinion, unofficial, unprofessional, but just my observation going through it is it felt pretty good that we could get through the school year without having to send kids home and do remote learning in the elementary. And even though we had kids that had to quarantine and stuff like that, because of exposures, we'd never, like I said at the beginning, we never had a lot of in the classroom you could point to and say that was an exposure and a transmission that took place in the classroom. And I think part of it, even though kids don't wear them perfect and stuff, I think it helped. But some of the other things would have to be in place as well. So I just need to get a feel for where the board's at as far as making that maybe in addition as a next step, possibly we're looking at next week where we're at when we have some Q tests coming in. But that might be a first step prior to having the whole school go to masking. So I'd just like you to think about that and give your feedback to me. And next Monday at 1 o'clock, Kay and I will do our meeting again. So any questions on that?
I got several from the first page. Do you know if you're comparing our school districts, Roseau, Cooch, Beltrami, do you know if they're doing anything differently than we are
No.
to keep those numbers where they are? I mean,
Like, are we testing more, are we?
testing more, somebody's masking in the elementary, are they distancing differently? I mean, it seems like we're an outlier with a 9.6. I don't honestly think that Warroad's doing anything different than we are, so.
Well, I think the Bemidji school system is, I want to say they are masking.
I believe they are, yeah.
School-wide?
Yep.
In response to that number?
Elementary, I would have to check with Mr. Lutz there.
In response to a county number?
Do we have the last percentages?
I wonder if they didn't just.
In your email, maybe. to everybody.
Implement that?
I wonder if they didn't implement that at the beginning of
August
the year.
23rd.
They started, if you look at some of the larger school districts, just because
is that my
how
bad
it
too?
operates.
No,
I was
I
just-
had my old,
They
I
started,
had my
I
old
was
one,
just in
but this is 2 weeks
Bemidji
ago.
not too long ago, and when you see a lot of people in the community wearing masks,
yep.
you know,
So,
I mean, and that might be because of this higher percentage too, I don't know, but
I don't-
I observed that both in Bemidji and in Fargo, that there was a lot of people
Yeah.
with their masks.
I thought that
I'm not
too.
aware of
Bemidji.
rules.
Agree with that.
Yeah, I was just in
doing
Bemidji and,
All right. But so I guess what I'm looking at, and I'm not playing devil's advocate, but that their numbers are lower and they haven't masked yet. And I'm wondering, here's the next, is that we've been potentially better at testing, keeping our community aware of that? We can do things faster, quicker, more efficiently by getting tests now than we did a year ago. So to compare the fact that we didn't have classroom transmission a year ago might be more attributable to just the way that we can isolate and identify at this point? Does that make any sense, Kay?
Well, I'm just looking at the percentages from August 23rd report, and every county except for Coochin has one up. And I think it's at about the same rate, maybe one a little higher than, I'm not a math person.
Yeah, well, Coach went up too, but
But
we
these are the,
really went up.
yeah,
We went from 1.5 to 9.6.
and remember at the beginning, and I can go
And
back.
is this
Those, that's
MDH?
MDH.
that's,
Where
okay,
this
this
is
is
the
medic,
So it's a
Yes.
different
yeah,
source.
different
source.
scale.
So, and there's a
Okay.
delay, so those numbers are last Thursday,
I guess,
whereas the CMS is more today.
No, those are the 23rd of August report, so it's a couple
Yeah.
weeks ago.
I guess what I'm getting at is everybody's kind of one up, we shouldn't be like
Statewide,
too,
everyone's.
Yeah.
I would say
too
that's a
like
safe-
frazzled that
Yeah.
our
But
numbers
as
have one.
far as time in school, we're all a week in, right?
Can you do a
I
look
mean, I
back
don't-
to see where we were through CMS on that date, or is that data gone? I'm just curious, because we're not comparing like to like
I
when
know,
we're looking
yeah,
at that.
yeah.
That is something I'll have to talk to Kay.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it is or not, but I was just curious.
I guess I'd be more alarmed if we were the only ones that
Yeah,
had one up and
No, I think
others
it's-
had it.
Yeah, I think everyone's with the Delta, I think it's just a little more
Yeah,
to it.
it's hard with the 18 tests out right now, too. I mean, that could be really telling.
And do we know,
know.
are all those 18 test people that are within the school building, like kids?
No.
staff?
We
That's
said something like
countywide.
this.
It's just countywide.
But that's my question again, is it, we are quicker to identify, so we understand the tracing more quickly. We have the ability to identify that kid
Small group.
is in that classroom, so we
Yeah.
can say we didn't have classroom transmission last year at that same point, but by the time we were aware of that, there were gaps and there were, much larger ripples going on, so it was harder to identify it as a classroom transmission last year, as opposed to now. I mean, we should use that to our advantage, which gets me to the next question, which is, when you talk about the parents being asked to, submitting a health screening, for instance, is that a requirement for attendance at that point? Where
No.
a home screening before they send their kid to school, like almost a homework project for the parents to say, we've done our due diligence?
A lot of them
Yeah.
didn't even do it last year.
No, we just encourage it, and it just saves us time and office staff time, when it just gets downloaded into Synergy and we know who's had the temp check and is symptom-free.
Is that unrealistic, though, to ask a parent to say, submit online, that you've done, I mean, even if it's
No,
as
I
simple
know.
as checking a box on a
It's-
computer or
it's
something?
on
or-
your
With three
phone.
kids, if you're busy in the mornings.
I know,
Yeah.
that's,
Just saying, I forgot a lot last year.
Yeah,
Like,
So-
it's busy in the morning, you don't think about it.
so it's
yeah,
on
we
your
can't
own.
mandate it and we can't do
Yeah.
it for attendance. All we can do is
Yes.
just ask for everyone to help because we're short-staffed, and if they don't do it at home, then someone at school has to do it. If we get to a point where we wanna be monitoring everyone's, temperature and symptoms.
And
'Cause that's a
basically
huge
what
thing,
you're
if we don't
doing
have kids
is,
showing up, especially when you're not masking.
Yeah.
We don't want kids with symptoms, and we have to remember that some people are symptom-free. But,
I mean, you're just asking, so you're trying to tune up, so if it gets
Yep.
worse, it
Yep.
has to be mandatory.
But I mean, if we had 30 families already call in, I feel like they're doing their due diligence by keeping their kids home. I mean, 30 kids is a lot of kids for only having, what, 260 in the
Well,
elementary, or is that the whole?
That's the whole school,
That's
isn't
the whole
it?
school, yeah, so how many's in the elementary? Or what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 460 kids in the school, so.
Yeah.
Or
But you know
about
what I
that.
mean?
Yeah.
It seems like majority
It
are,
helps, yeah. It
I
only
mean-
takes a few to
right.
walk in the building with.
So last question that I'm going down to is, and I'm trying to understand the testing, the pool testing. Is
Yep.
that an appropriate mode for, like you go into the fourth grade, you remove the 2 positives already,
Okay.
and then you do a pool test?
So if you look on, well, let's move to the plan here.
On page
And it-
3 of the plan?
Page 3, it starts, a lot of this I took off of the CDC and MDH. It talks about the Q test. And we've talked a little bit about that. It takes about 20 minutes for processing, although it does take more time to input the information, so it's not total 20 minutes. It probably might take the person that's doing the testing 20, 30 minutes.
But only the first time. Once their profile is in there, then it's there.
It goes faster.
Okay.
I allow 40 minutes per person, partly to clean up after, set up for the next one. But, you know, once you have people in there, if you're doing a repeat test, then you just click on their name and it's less monkey business with that input.
So there'll be training, because you don't want to have any cross-contamination, so there's certain steps that, you just can't just whip out the swab and just go from person to person. There's a different protocol you have to follow. So it is a little more time intensive. So it might be a little bit of a challenge if you had 40 kids that you want to do the Q test, and that could take some time. But the Q is a test that could be considered when rapid results are needed, and I see the calls this morning could have been, Billy has a sniffle and a sore throat, set up a time, pull up, do the test, and determine if it's positive or not. But it also could be used for if they're asymptomatic. We could use it as a screening tool, as long as we have supplies and time to do it. But that is something that they discuss here.
But that could be a lot of staff time, if you will.
Yep, I don't think it'd be very time effective to screen the whole school every other week.
They have these Q tests at the clinic too, right? Or at the pharmacy in town?
Yeah.
Like, is there other options?
There are other options. The pharmacy does charge a fee,
Right.
and I think it's
$100.
$100. I'm not sure what happens at the clinic if they have to do insurance or reimbursement.
I think for, up at the pharmacy, it's $100 cash, and then you get a receipt, so if your health savings account will cover that, like a pharmaceutical or something, you can submit it that way.
But it'd still be a cost.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still paying it basically out of pocket.
Yeah.
And how about at the clinic, Kay?
The clinic does not have Q, everything is run through the
Okay.
hospital lab.
Okay.
And so that goes through insurance.
Okay,
But there's no out-of-pocket.
okay.
That's part of our agreement with
With
the
the state or
Yeah.
whatever, yeah.
Yeah. It's just that we don't have a lot of supplies, because it
Right.
is allocated,
Okay.
how we use those are limited, but we pretty much do send outs at a 72-hour turnaround.
So, and am I right if it does say Minnesota has a limited supply of free Q tests available? So it's not a unlimited resource for us either, so. I think most of it will be used for smaller numbers. For someone that comes up with symptoms at school, it's a quick way to, especially those kids that have allergies and stuff like that, rather than having to send them home and wait days for other testing options. This is a good tool to try to keep them in the classroom as much as possible. The tests have all been converted to online, so we can give it to someone and they're gonna have to go in with an account.
Yeah,
And then
they're
they
all
would-
the Zoom enabled tests like we were
Okay.
doing.
And that is, once we've used up our supply, then we're done. We can't order anymore pretty much, so we have 20,
Roughly.
Oh.
so that's not gonna last very long.
It's
So.
like nothing.
Mary had her hand up.
Tracy got back to me, she was able to look it up on her computer, there were 8 high school kids out sick and 14 elementary.
And I don't know how that compares to normal
Sure.
fall allergy season that we get for years, so. So I'm gonna skip over the vault test, 'cause that's limited. And then the Patel pool, I mean, like molecular nasal swab test. Do you know off the top of your head how many we have of those? Okay. That one, this is the mystery test, I call it, because we don't know what the heck we're doing with it yet, but we're learning. So,
Because is this the one where you needed a group of 9 or
you
something?
can have 5, my understanding, you can have 5 to 10. And it's a pool test, so you can test individuals and I think it can track it. But once you put them in the vial, there could be cross-contamination. So basically what you're doing is just doing a little test, 5 to 10 people. And if one of them is positive, it's gonna show all of them positive. So then you have to go back and do a Q test. But it might be a good way to screen groups or grade levels. And if there's not any positives in the pool, then you don't have to worry about using up your Q test. It's a way to just kind of do a spot
What's
check.
the turnaround time on the test?
That, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Those we sent out, I think it was like 48 to 72 hours.
Okay.
That sounds about right.
I mean, you could have a lot of people that would be exposed in that period of time.
So, for instance, you get two kids in fourth grade. How big is fourth grade, roughly? 30 kids? So you get 2 kids, now you got 28 of them that you can say, we need and do you just playing the odds game and just test 10 of them? Or do you test 3 cohorts of 10?
Except it's just in one section of that class so far.
So, okay, so now we're down to 15,
now we're down to 12 kids.
right? So do
You
you,
know,
do you
yeah.
do that and then, I mean, let the odds play out, but say
Test
like
it
on a
that
Friday
pool.
afternoon,
Yeah.
right? We just had a weekend, get your pool testing done on a Friday afternoon and hopefully you got a result by Monday sometime. It seems like there's an appropriateness to that, at least from a school perspective. I mean, that's what we're all sitting here wondering is how
Yeah.
infected is that fourth grade class, you know?
Yeah.
And we just don't have an idea at all, at least it gives you an idea.
The 5th grade, how many kids are
But
there?
can I ask a question, because even if you have, so, okay, this pool testing,
36.
so you put them all in there, and you have one of them, the test positive, well, it's gonna show that all of them are positive, and then you still have to do testing again, so it doesn't make any sense.
No,
I feel like it's just
hopefully,
like an extra step.
Hopefully
It makes
none of
sense
them
when
test
you
positive.
have X number of Q tests
To use,
to use.
when you're
We don't have
limited on
enough
how
to
many.
do everyone in the building,
Right,
you know, and it might be better to use it, do screening, periodic screening on groups or grade levels or teams, that you're not suspecting is a positive, just to do a check. Just to
Read 'em
Right.
out.
Test is just to see if we should do Q tests.
More testing,
Yeah.
yes.
but,
It's not to actually diagnose.
right, because what we would say is if in that pool, it was negative, there would be no need for further testing. Am I
That's probably where you
understanding
wanna
it
use
right?
it more, is where you,
Yeah, where you're trying to rule out,
Trying to rule
and
out.
hopefully you're getting a negative.
But like you said, I mean, the only time I think it would be efficient is like over a weekend when you have those 2 days apart.
Yeah.
But if you're waiting 3 days and you're still all coming to school.
right, or quarantining the entire class, neither of which is gonna fly very well.
But it's something to consider for,
Well, we talk about future, but do you go
Yeah.
to the other half of the fourth grade class right now and do a pool test?
right,
You know, they're
On
interacting on the
Friday.
playground or in the lunchroom or
Yeah.
whatever, so.
And that's if you have all sign off from parents, which
Uh-huh.
I would guess you maybe won't.
So if you go down next here where it talks about the moderate, this is kind of where we want to look at the different tools we have. So under moderate, they suggest, or we have in our plan to offer screening, testing to students, teachers, and staff who are not fully vaccinated at least once a week.
And do we have enough supplies to do
Well,
that?
we can offer it, see how many takers we get.
Yeah.
And that's where you can determine if you do a pool test or if you do the Q test. But we should offer it. Offer screening, testing for high-risk sports, extracurricular activities at least twice per week for participants who are not fully vaccinated. And then offer screening testing for students participating in low and intermediate risk sports and activities at least once per week for participants who are not fully vaccinated.
Which basically everyone in pre-K through 6 is not fully vaccinated.
Correct. That's our students.
Right.
And also,
And I understand that Q testing is not as invasive as some of the tests, right?
that's my understanding.
Yeah, it's just been a little bit further on.
Yeah.
If you pick your nose, it's not any worse than that. So kids shouldn't be too bad with it. So.
I just ready to go.
There you go. So I think screening as much as we can, promote it, because especially when we're not at a level of mitigation strategies that we were at last year. The Delta variant, I think trying to keep tabs on any unknown positives and trying to cut it off at the pass is a prudent and logical thing to do.
Is there any way to, so the letters, the release letters have not gone out yet?
No,
But
I
you're-
have some samples from public health and
Okay. And how quick of a return rate do you normally get for a letter that goes to?
I don't know. That's on.
Yeah.
So, but we'll send out the paper letter, but we'll also do the instant alert. And that goes, there'll be a phone message, and once we have it, we'll have it available. They hear a phone call and they wanna go do it, they can go to the website and download it, sign it, and email it in. Tomorrow, we have some Q test happening, parents wanna call in and give verbal approval, we can do that, but we might wanna have them follow up in writing saying, so we have it.
What's if they don't want to give approval?
Then their kid doesn't get tested.
They don't get tested, but can they still attend school, or do they have to do their quarantine?
They will do their quarantine. So there's a lot of kids that, we're doing the fewer days, but one of the requirements, if you wanna come back sooner, you need to get tested. Okay, I think that's a clear black line, we don't wanna have anyone unknowingly positive walk in the halls, we can avoid it, so. To me, that would be kind of an absolute, that's what we're gonna do.
You know, I did go get tested last fall, and I went to, I can't remember if it was Roseau or War Road, but it was significantly faster than going here, and other people weren't aware that you could do that, so I don't know if that's something that,
Well,
we
last
could
year I was
provide-
on the board, we went one time and we had to wait 4 days, and we went another time and it was
yeah. I
a
mean,
couple
here,
of hours.
it was,
I mean,
it was days before I had an opportunity here, so I went out of town, and within 24 hours, I had my results. So,
Well, as long as we have supplies,
Yeah.
for students and staff,
when they
20
base it on
minutes.
how many symptoms you have, what symptoms you
Yeah,
have, what kind
exposure.
of test they're gonna do on.
So even just providing those, look outside your town if you really need to get this done. I mean,
Well, because all the tests here are sent out except, right? Except the rapid test.
Yeah, we have what's called a sepia,
Uh-huh.
and that's the one that's used in the emergency room for the ones where you need to know. They can also run for influenza and RSV on that one too, so if they're trying to do a differential
Okay.
diagnosis. And they use that one for pre-ops, so it's kind of more for the medical.
Uh-huh.
And then there's another one, that's a rapid test, but you have to have symptoms with that one.
Okay.
But those two rapid tests, our supplies are limited.
So you have to be careful, yeah.
Yeah, you know, we're allotted so much, and some of it's based on what you use, and, it's,
Well, and I would guess some of that's by population. So if you look at Roseau County's population versus like in Woods,
so it's in a lot.
they get a lot more, and yes, they might have more tests, but not necessarily, you know.
Different, suppliers, and,
Yeah.
and then the other one is the send out, that's the one that, it's generally can take $72. And they generally have supplies on send out.
You can order those ahead of time? Or if there's ones you can order at least,
The vote ones you could order on your own.
there's on your own, yeah.
That's the saliva fault test.
I think Robin had said she had ordered one just to have available.
She has to use it before, so.
That's right.
Just to ask, how accurate is the Q test?
It's good. It's the one they're using to get across the border, or, it's nucleic acid amplification.
Is there a percentage? I mean, is there?
Yeah, and it's, I don't have that with me, but it's 90s something.
Accurate.
Dr. Cole says it's a good test.
So your ask of us is,
We're going to the yellow. That's my
That's my
understanding.
recommendation, yeah.
We're going to have a discussion here on the masking in elementary school, so I think that's probably the biggest, but I think I have one question about the yellow, the moderate level.
Yep.
Having reread that a while ago, but on page 6, the paragraph, students and staff who are fully vaccinated or have had a lab confirmed COVID-19 within the last 90 days do not need to quarantine but should monitor for symptoms. I'm looking at CDC logic there, but my understanding is that despite the fact that I am vaccinated, I still have equal ability to transfer that disease or that virus to somebody else. So is that not an applicable paragraph anymore? It's kind of like we're making a decision based on non-logic there.
Well, unvaccinated people can transmit it as well. Still
So
can.
the percentage of breakthrough cases is much less. But it is there, and it's growing. I gave, Mr. Nelson a copy there of, how that's changed in 4 weeks. The breakthrough rate right now is 0.5, or that, last week, 0.5% for fully vaccinated. We started out at like 0.1. We're up to 0.5%. But the breakthrough,
Right, and I understand that as a person who has, even with a vaccine, has the ability to get the virus, but I'm talking about my ability to transfer it when, I mean, we discussed the potential benefits of hand washing, for instance, where I say to Jeff, hi, how you doing, shake his hand, he's unvaccinated, puts it on my hand, and I shake Lynn Ellis's hand. I seem to be an equal transmitter in that respect, and that's where I'm getting in the school system, where everything we're doing is about proximity, is about droplets, is about, the immediacy of it, as opposed to me walking around with the virus. I still am just a carrier in some fashion, and that's why I wonder if that's treating the 2 kids in 4th grade unequally because one of them has the vaccine and one of them doesn't, that type of thing.
yeah,
where I'm looking for an equality that at least makes it more palatable for,
Yeah.
the general public on both sides of the argument.
Yeah,
Well,
and with the Delta variant and in healthcare, whether we're vaccinated or unvaccinated, we social distance, we wear a mask. The testing strategy is a little different depending on how many cases we have in our midst. But, and we do still need to watch for symptoms. And yes, you can still get COVID. What the vaccine prevents you from is severe disease, less risk for hospitalization, for ICU stay, for death.
Okay, but still, I think you're not hearing my question, which is, you're asking for a 10-day quarantine for an unvaccinated child, correct? But you're not asking for any quarantine for the other child sitting in the aisle next to him if they have a vaccine,
that's
correct?
because statistically, they're far less likely to get it and transmit it. And this is some of the information I haven't had a chance to send out. So it impacts, if you're unvaccinated, it impacts people differently and quite startlingly differently. I mean, you're more likely to get it, you're more likely to get more sick. Where if you're vaccinated, it's likely that you won't be having symptoms. So, if
Or
people,
we won't transmit it. That's what Kim said.
Right, and that's what I'm wondering, is there a more appropriate, like, I've got the vaccine, how long does it take the germs that you gave me when you shook my hand to now be mitigated, that type of thing? Or do you just say for a day, can you stay out of school, that kind of thing, so that everything that may, pose a transfer is done? I'm looking for the logic. I would like CDC recommendation on that, and I think they have one like that. I mean, I'm assuming that verbiage comes from the CDC, doesn't it? So,
Yeah.
But then the other piece is that social distancing piece. So when you're social distancing, you're not shaking hands. Right?
Right, yep, yeah.
You know,
your people that are vaccinated statistically are far less likely to get it and transmit it. It's not perfect.
to transmit it, that's the question. Now, I'm not asking about the get it, I understand that for sure.
If you don't have it, you can't transmit it.
Yeah.
There's still a
But-
surface.
But a vaccinated person can give COVID to someone else. We do transmit it.
The person is fighting it off, but you still transmit it.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm not arguing
Right.
that, but I'm saying if 90% of the people that are vaccinated don't get it, if you don't have it, you can't transmit it.
Yeah, and so there's less risk.
Okay, and I understand that math too. I mean, that makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah. I'm fully vaccinated, but I'm still not taking a chance. I'm sitting here with my mask
Appreciate that.
and trying to stay away from people because I think I can still get it. I'm old.
well, and I think the other piece that I think about with it is what your risk is if coming in contact with someone who has it or someone who's known to have it. And in healthcare, that's a lot stronger than it is out on the street.
And we are not a vaccinated county,
No,
so, and I don't see very many masks around.
hardly.
One here and there when you run into me, huh?
All right, so back to the original questions again. We're moving into the yellow level. I mean, I see head nods at the board
Oh,
table.
we're in the yellow and headed to red.
I understand that too,
Yeah.
and we don't want to get there, obviously, but I think we're all in agreement that we need to implement the yellow, the moderate mitigation efforts. And so is that worthy of further discussion or no? Well, that's what I brought up that for, because that was the one paragraph that I had, some questions on. But I mean, if there's more questions on the yellow, it seems to make sense. It's not like an onerous movement, it's just a little more tighter the vest.
If you're gonna push the masking and the vaccinations, but treat everyone the same, that doesn't make sense to me. And if the data supports that, you're far less likely to transmit it. It's the level of risk, it's never zero. But what would motivate anyone to go vaccinated, or send their kid to get vaccinated if there's an explosion in the classroom, they have to quarantine for 14 days.
Right.
It does not make any sense.
Why bother then?
Same thing with the masking. And this is an exception in the national guidance that excludes students in an indoor classroom from quarantine when both the case and the close contact were wearing a mask. And that's what I put in the plan. You know, if we're gonna promote mask wearing and kids are wearing masks, then, you know, as long as they're not showing symptoms, I think that's a point where we would try to avoid having them miss school. Because they're doing what the plan is laying out there, so.
Well, that paragraph also becomes a little bit moot when we start talking about the testing possibilities we have now too, which I think would be even more determinant.
Yep.
So,
So it would actually change, we're in the green, we're gonna go to yellow, right?
yep.
If we do that, what is going to be directly affected? Because like, face coverings, we're still just encouraging it, right?
Yep.
To me, it feels more just preparatory, like you're gonna start to do some of these things and be a little more strict.
I think
But
we need to start,
We're still offering the
Yeah.
screening, right,
yeah,
to everybody.
Yeah, we're pushing on parents a little bit.
Well,
The vaccination's the same, house screening and
I think
monitoring is
these
a little more.
things, I think these things, and
Yeah,
when we talk
listed.
about,
Yeah.
that our actions are what we're doing differently than we're doing in the green.
Yeah.
That to me is what it says, is that we're gonna, you know, increase the testing, we're gonna send a letter out to parents, we're gonna do the health monitoring stations that we had last year. You know, that to me is what are the big changes of, and then the discussion of having, you know, that's the discussion. That's not in the monitor plan.
And at that public meeting here a few weeks back, I think that was our charge to the public in general was, you know, you need to be invested in this, you need to make efforts in this, and I think once again, now we can raise our hand and remind them, it's time to put up. I mean, you said that, monitor your kids a little more closely, pay attention, don't send them to school if they're sick, try to keep them apart, try to talk to them about the logic of not, you know, of social distancing or whatever it is we're asking, so. I guess that's a benefit also, moving it up.
And they're listening, if there's 30 kids staying home. You know, they're listening.
Right, and that's what you hope. I mean, you're trying to give the community the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, you're trying.
That's great.
Oh, I think that's the problem right now, because I didn't know until this afternoon when my coworker got a phone call that there was 4 cases. Why? Because my home didn't get a call. And,
there should have been one that went out to.
There was one.
all-
Maybe.
everybody. Went to everyone.
Okay.
I got it.
or it didn't go to my phone, but I think it's the awareness, moving to up a level. In yellow is very visible, right? Green's good. Yellow, hey, use some caution. When we're in the red, that's a problem. So I think that the visual of it is helpful.
Right, and I did get that notice today.
You did,
I got that on my phone.
okay. And it's not, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
dig anybody, absolutely not, but I'm just, but it was like, whoa, I didn't
But if you're,
know.
you're not getting it, who's not getting it?
Exactly,
Who isn't
yes.
aware?
Then we
Well,
need to
I'm on the
update
school
our
board.
Information and
Yeah.
synergy.
Yeah.
So we'll check that out.
Yeah.
Because that's
Yeah.
driven through our.
Because you should have
Yeah.
gotten it probably from 2 sources.
But it's even, well, maybe, yeah, but then
Yeah.
that Friday, does everybody get the call on Friday? And,
I do all students, all staff.
Okay.
Parents. It's like
Okay.
2,000 some messages that go out. Some
Okay.
people might get 2 or 3 of them and probably get annoyed by it, but.
yeah.
Well, I get the text, the phone call, and the email, so I miss it.
Yeah,
All right,
so I think moving up to yellow is,
I think
appropriate.
moving
Is
up to
appropriate.
yellow is appropriate, but I don't know if we should go to asking all elementary staff to mask in the classrooms.
We can start thinking when we're gonna do that.
Like
I
maybe
wish we had the
revisit that
results
next
from the
week.
18 tests that are out. That is just such a huge number to, oh, you have none.
How quickly can we call one of these meetings? 24 hours, or do we have to do 72?
Well, if it's an
Emergency meeting, you can call it pretty quick. We should try to have 3 days anyway.
Do we have to, as the board, can't we put something on you to allow you to make that decision? Because I know it costs time and money to hold meetings, and I'm just trying to be fiscally responsible.
But I'm on your side where I thought this morning when I got out of bed 1, and now we're at 4. You know, and
Okay.
the whole, it's kind of taken me back a little. I don't want to be too much of a knee jerk, but I also want
Right.
the ability to be a knee jerk, and that's what,
Yeah.
that's where I'm sitting with this right now. So if those tests come back, I'm really curious about these 18, because other people have thoughts on it, and if 18 tests, even if we get, 2, 3 more,
Well, and tomorrow are we gonna have to eat?
right, that's what I'm looking at. Or did we just get unlucky with this because, Warren and Roseau seemed to be able to have school and keep it to a minimum. We just got a little unlucky with it.
Well, that's just it, that's why I'm like mildly hesitant, cause it's the first week of school.
Right.
Yep,
I mean,
they're all coming
maybe
back
this
from,
is just a fluke and we need to give it, or, like unlucky, like you said. Give it a couple weeks and see if those numbers are gonna stay like that.
I don't think
You
we
know what
can
I mean?
give it a couple weeks.
yeah,
But I mean, like.
I was curious about not being able to get it to next Monday. That's what I'm concerned
Yeah,
about.
I mean,
I mean,
that's
we're talking 7 days here,
That's my
but,
concern too.
Well, as they come in, I've been trying to get those notices out as
Yeah.
quickly as possible, and I feel really bad for the 5th grade parents. I got 2 notices almost back to back. So I gotta figure out a better way to do that, but I'm trying to be very transparent and let people know when we have positive cases and what grade level it's in. And when I do send it out, I send it out to parents specific to the classroom teachers. So if it's in classroom A, where the positive is, they get a letter stating that that's someone in your child's classroom has tested positive and your child may have been exposed, and we put down the dates where we believe that person 2 days back from symptoms. So parents know if their kid was in the classroom on Thursday, Friday last week, they were in the room with someone who's positive. And I'm hoping that's resulting in some of the people that are keeping their kid home when they're,
The vigilance.
or they might call in and say, hey, I'm gonna get my kid home until they get tested and start scheduling that, But I think we need to be realistic and anticipate that we're gonna have more kids getting it. And it's gonna happen quicker than I had hoped. I just think that it's gonna be a new trend coming, and I think we just need to plan on trying to increase some of our mitigation here in the near future. We're not gonna stop it, but we can hopefully slow it down, so we don't have a whole big group of kids online learning at home. And also, we want to keep them in person. We're gonna have to take some not so fun steps in order to have that happen. And I would rather have our kids wearing masks and be in the classroom, in the school building, to make that happen, even if it's for 2-3 weeks. I'd rather do that than get to a point where everyone's positive and they're sitting at home.
But if everybody got positive, then we're good for 90 days, right?
Well, after their 10 days, yeah. But I'm gonna go back to the statistics and my concern with the kids 12 and under who are not vaccinated. Do we wanna risk 4 to 6 kids ending up in the hospital? Because statistically, that's kind of where it is right now. And as a school board, administration, and a community, what kind of risks do we want to take with our kids? If 463 kids are fine, they get home, they sick for a few days, miss some school, blah, blah, blah. But if we have 4 or 5 or even 1 kid in my mind, trying to find a hospital bed or an ICU, that's a concern. And we need to keep that in mind. If statistics fall into place where they're at right now, we could be looking at 4 or 5 kids potentially where this could be very severe. And we do have kids that have not very good immunities. We have kids with asthma. So we have kids in our midst that could get very sick with COVID. And we have to make sure that we're protecting not just our healthy kids, but our more vulnerable kids. So that's my biggest concern. It's not that I want us to a knee-jerk reaction, but I think we need to always keep that in mind. And I don't like wearing a mask. That's my personal preference. But like I said at that meeting, I will do it at any business or organization that requires it. I'm thinking maybe I might start doing that at school here, because I think it's worth me giving up a little bit of my personal freedom to keep people around me safe. I haven't been a role model this last week and a half, but I think that's something that I need to start looking at.
Well, would another thing, to add, like in the letter, to be, you know, to mention that if your child has health vulnerabilities, that, you know, masks are even more strongly suggested?
Do we have a lot of kids or staff wearing masks
No,
that are choosing to?
no, we have a handful. I don't have a strong number. But yeah, we have some kids and some staff that consistently are masking up. And you
But
never
the
know. I might,
majority
you know,
are,
when,
I'm guessing.
I don't know, if I was a 5th or 4th grade parent right now and I had those notices and my kid was in that room, I might be thinking, well, maybe I should have my kids put on their mask. I don't know. I mean, that's something, or not, but
But I was told that they are wearing a mask in the class.
the ones that are choosing to, yeah, it's a choice. No one's being required to. Okay.
I may have misunderstood, but that's what my student told me, was that their teacher, they all had to put on masks.
Yeah, I'm
Not,
aware of
and
that.
it wasn't a choice,
I'm not aware of that.
so, and I'm not against it, but if we're saying it's a choice, but then they're being required, I feel that's
Yeah.
a little hypocritical, but.
I've not been in a classroom where everyone's been wearing masks.
But, like I said, it could have been misunderstood too, as this was an option. They took it as that, but that's why I didn't mention it before, but.
Before I ask for motion in a second about that stuff, can we call a meeting in 24 hours
You can, under certain circumstances.
without stating or putting out public notice?
Well, no, you would have to notify the paper. And we'd have to post it on, get it out there as quickly as we can. I would like to try to avoid that, because what happens is, if you call a meeting tomorrow, then you might have some people that haven't had a chance to even know about it or voice their opinion. So I'd be hesitant unless it's really a dire thing to do something like that, to make a decision without having it publicly advertised.
So I have a question. I don't know if this is for Kay or for Jeff. So those 18 tests that were sent out on Friday, is the expectation that the result will be back tomorrow?
They should have come in today
Yeah.
sometime.
And we would get at least whatever information you had as quickly as sometime tomorrow
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, so we did a large number of tests today, and we have a large number scheduled for tomorrow as well.
So I see that you and,
Jeff and I,
you have a meeting next Monday.
Yep.
So and that's scheduled, and you have that scheduled. But should you get back a number of positives again,
I'll,
you would report to Jeff obviously immediately, or?
Tiara would get the results if there's any school.
yeah, Tiara and I connect daily on school items. So testing that's done, say at Sanford and Bemidji or Life Care, other places, I don't get those real timely. They come through eventually. But the ones that I know about quickly are the ones that are done locally.
And when you say locally, do you mean just here in the debt, or do you get also from like Warwood and Roseland?
They come in, but they come in through the Department of Health to my queue. So they have to go And then when we have like a Labor Day holiday and they're no longer reporting out on weekends. So like I didn't have much in my queue this morning, except what I knew from locally. So I think
I'm assuming at this point you're asking us if you would like the board to go ahead and put the mask mandate into effect or the mask recommendation into effect at this meeting.
No, I didn't necessarily intend that.
I see it, you said discussion,
Yep.
and
That's, I just wanted to get it out there.
I mean, I think we're all on the same page you are, which is the last thing I want is to see some kid have to go to the hospital. I mean, that's what's bugging me on this. My conscience is not gonna like that.
I also feel like we did set some tiers, and I don't want to do the knee jerk. As much as I want to support you 100%, I also am a little bit restrained in doing that because this is what we said we would do.
Right, at a public meeting.
At a
I
public
wanted us
meeting.
to have a discussion to raise the awareness or alarm,
Yep.
depending on where you're at. Because after next week, when we come back on whatever day, things might have changed and we might be making another decision.
And tomorrow, you might, yeah.
Well,
I'm-
I guess from my perspective, I certainly appreciate the updates that you've been giving us, you know, from when it's in a classroom and, you know, I mean, to me, that's of great interest to me, because I think that's the only way that we can, you know, stay in tune with it.
And maybe just hold your breath a little bit and see what it comes in at, because we're at, what is it, 9? We need,
Well, we've been hovering
6 more,
8 to 12 for
you know,
quite a while.
and we're in that 15, and it's probably, I mean, I know it says 7 days, but that's,
Well, I mean, it just is, we definitely have to strongly consider that it may happen.
Yeah, what I need the board to do is to approve those revisions, the addition of the testing in the plan.
Yep.
yeah.
And approve my recommendation with those things listed.
And
And
you,
that would be under my recommendation, those bulleted points.
Jeff,
And the discussion was, just for the elementary again, was just to
That's just discussion.
look at an option, because right now, it looks like our positives are in isolated to 2 classrooms in the
And-
elementary.
if we go to a high level, you have the latitude to make that based on our,
We would need to pass a resolution at the next board meeting.
I think we should do that.
So,
Or at least consider it.
okay.
That, because we did, this is our plan, right? And at some point, we can't call special meetings all the time.
Right, if you're following the plan, if we're gonna change the plan, that's one thing, but if we're following the plan,
And as much as possible as a board, we're gonna meet and try to make, and be there, but there may be times you have to just roll with it. The plan.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna push that on him.
I don't
I
know.
won't be part of that. But
You don't think so?
I will, if you want me to do it, we'll have the resolution. I would rather have a process where it involves the school board and the public. And I don't wanna have to wake
Yeah.
up
I know
in
what
the
you mean.
morning.
Yeah.
And remember those numbers, if we hit the 15, that's not,
it's not an absolute.
it's not
Yeah.
push the
No.
panic button, you know, cause just even tonight, we're hemming and hawing about the yellow and this and that. And I think it's good to have the discussion. I would rather keep the process as is and maybe not have as quick a turnaround on making changes, but at least have discussion on it.
Right.
And I know public health would rather give me have me be able to change it quicker, and I understand where they're coming from, but I think as divisive as all this is, I think it's important that we have every other meeting, and if we have to do an emergency meeting, my recommendation is that we do a 3-day notice for a special meeting. And alert the parents that we're meeting and specific decisions we have to make. I would rather do the special meeting and more time.
Because if we had to have a meeting next Monday, a special meeting, the notice would need to go out by Thursday or by Friday. Thursday, right?
And we can have an emergency meeting. All I have to do is I have to notify those groups and organizations, mainly the newspaper, and I can't remember who's on the list as far as that we need to send that notification to. And it would be on social media and stuff, but I would think it would have to be something really drastic for the board to.
Yeah.
Positive stuff up tomorrow. Well, that's,
You know what I mean?
I mean, that's what I'm thinking, if it really accelerates, you know, then.
Is that a motion?
Just don't get too excited too fast.
Right. Yeah, I know.
But I also don't want it to get out of hand. You know, so it's.
You know, we do have Woody in attendance here who will nicely summarize what's being said tonight, so the public will have an ear to it though by Wednesday morning, correct?
I'm phrasing in my mind right now quotes that won't disturb the populace too greatly.
Okay, thank you. But they're gonna be made aware of it. There'll be an article out on Wednesday.
I'm going to quote Jeff on his statistical analysis,
Yep.
because that does make a lot of sense. Where you have 262 students, the odds are there's gonna be 5 or 6 that are gonna end up in the hospital. You know, that's the odd, this is the way you cannot argue with. You know, but I'm trying to phrase it to a point where it's not gonna be inflammatory, because it shouldn't be.
Projected estimate. You've always been under the national
Yep,
number.
it's just,
But I want the public to know that we're discussing it now.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, that we're trying to make decisions based on what we're seeing on a very daily basis.
Yeah. I have to go home and figure out how to write this, but yeah, I'll give it my best shot.
Thank you.
well,
My best
no,
shot's usually pretty good.
we are recording all these and they will be posted. I haven't been doing the live Zoom,
Okay.
but we are recording and we'll post it.
Can I throw out the possibility for another comment? You guys are there, you're happy?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Do we have any idea of what the other school districts are doing with their testing? You know, I see on the sheet, what were we, 9% something?
9.3.
9.6. Roseau County 7.2. Are we testing way more than Roseau County is?
That's not school testing, that's county testing. That's under public health.
So, okay. That's what I mean.
So if you look at Roseau County, their population is probably what, 3-4 times ours?
Right.
You know, so they're probably testing more, but the percentage comes out a little
Bill
bit.
Travis probably 20 times ours.
Yeah, you know, so,
You can actually look that up on the website.
yeah.
My major concern here is if we put masks on our kids, this is my number one concern, put masks on our kids, Roseau County doesn't, Fort Road School District doesn't, they're taking our kids away from us. And that is gonna affect us hugely in our, especially in our extracurricular activities. You know, they're already coming over here taking our kids, and we put masks on our elementary kids, especially people from my area, your area, and Williams, that have, you know, the opportunity to go to, well, we all have the opportunity to go either way, but it's just as easy for them people to go over to Orland as it is to that.
Yeah.
So, I strongly encourage you guys to not put masks on our kids unless you absolutely have to. Has there been any sick kids in the hospital?
I don't want to wait for it though to get to that point.
Well, I
You and I are on the exact same page, whether it's, you know, the extracurriculars or the losing,
Whatever it is.
right, losing population in general to world, but I think that at some point you just look at it, hopefully don't have to, and say it's about safety, it's about health. And unfortunately, that may be a decision we have to make and make some enemies out of it.
I was cleaning on the high school side on Friday, a substitute for Kyle, and I did notice that not many teachers are using the sanitizers on the desk. I think there should be some more emphasis on that.
On the cleaning and the hygiene.
Right.
One thing about
Because
it
that's
is there are
huge.
people that
That's
have this that don't
very
know
important.
they got it. I mean, we know there's kids in the school that have this right now, and they have no symptoms. There's adults, I mean, one of us in this room might have it with no symptoms, you know, so.
And how do we do?
It's
No,
I
unless
mean,
we do more testing.
what are we gonna do, you know?
Not easy.
It's not easy.
Well, and I guess for me, the percentage of testing, the numbers, because our population is so low, it does affect those numbers, and how many people test affects those numbers. So I guess if you wanted to say, well, I guess if we test everyone and then our percentage positive would be less, you know, so there's really, you know, it's really kind of a double-edged sword as far as that number. You know, if all of us in this room got tested and no one was positive, that would, you know, that would push that number down.
My 2 cents as a parent and not a school employee right now is that I respect all of you, but I don't feel that it's up to you guys to determine whether or not I want to send my child to school with a mask. That should be up to the parent. And I do strongly feel that way.
Well, and I think there's a lot of people that strongly feel that way about vaccines and about masking.
Obviously,
and
I
about
understand that's your job.
And about
for your-
testing. And I understand, I fully understand that. You know, I just, you know, it's a real difficult position to be in.
I wouldn't want to be in a good position.
No, it's tough.
Well, the number I look at is just the head count in the elementary.
Yeah.
Right now, we have 4 kids. And you look at the spread and how that can happen exponentially. And my concern is we had a positive in 4th grade classroom, and now we got another positive in that very same classroom.
Yep.
5th grade, we had a positive, and now we have another positive in that classroom. So that's my concern.
Yep.
And I understand parents' rights and choices and stuff, but there's some things in life that choices are made for us. I mean, like to wear a seatbelt when they change that, you know, and when it comes to public health, there's points where you get to that, it's not always popular. And part of being in a democracy, we talk about freedom of choice, but it's also freedom to do what benefits others before ourselves. And I think smoking is another thing. We used to be able to smoke in the teacher's lounge years ago, but that was a public health thing. So they put restrictions on that for the benefit of everyone. And so I don't know. I don't know how to get around that. My point, or my job, is to keep the kids safe, and not always be popular or well appreciated. Is my point of view, but that's my job.
Now, what can we do for the good of the all, and the common good? And so sometimes we make personal sacrifices.
Well, my response to that too is, still as a parent, if you feel that your child should wear a mask because you feel safer, then have them wear one.
Unless it's a state mandate, you know, or there's a certain number that the state says, okay, once you guys hit 15%, then you have to put your masks on. But I also see your point too, that you don't want us to get to that 15%. And you're thinking, well, maybe we should put this on now. But like I said, if you put these on now, before you have to, you're probably gonna lose some families from this community, and they're gonna go to a different school district, whether it's Indus or Warroad. I mean, it's the reality of it.
Well, I don't think we should go to mass just yet. Like Woody said, there's other things that can be implemented, making sure the cleaning's happening, the hand washing's happening, a little bit more social distancing.
Less testing. Less testing.
I mean, there's other
testing
things
you do.
before masking.
Yeah.
I personally feel.
You want to
And I
find
think
those
at the
positive
school,
cases.
You
Yes.
haven't
That's
seen any
yellow.
sick kids. That's
So if
correct.
we move to the yellow
4
stage,
people die, or
Yeah.
3 people, or 2 people
we're still
die.
where we're.
We've had
at.
4
It's
people
just not
die.
the screening.
Four people, okay,
Yes.
that they're getting on it?
That's, well, you go by percentage, it's what, 1/10 of 1% of the.
Yeah, so what, I mean,
And I do too, I mean, they were both had underlying conditions as it was,
yeah,
so.
All right,
But
well,
at the
that's,
same time, you don't wanna see the kids end up in ICU.
right.
here's another thing, I mean, rumor has it, International Falls, they went to his mask mandate, and today, I believe it was, and there's 80 students that were going to school.
And we started school.
They started,
Mhm.
right?
So maybe it was from the beginning of the school year that they lost 80 kids, you know?
Did we get any of those kids?
Oh, my God.
You know, you can sure use them.
Oh, the vultures are circling. Yes.
Raise our hand, we'll take them.
All right.
We're not gonna get them if we put masks on them.
But that's just it, if that's, I mean, hypothetically, if we went to masking and kids didn't follow that, or parents, what would we do?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, if we put it on, it wasn't like a state mandate, but we said, hey, we want masking. I mean, we're not,
Schools are doing that already.
What was the
You
answer
offer,
there,
you
Joe?
offer online.
online for them, because I know we
Just
weren't,
like we did last year with distance learning.
right, but you said this year it's like a time limited thing though. It's not like a full
Well, with the
distance.
Homebound, that's.
With the
another
homebound.
option, Yeah, no, so there's options for parents to take if they don't wanna.
To do the masking, if we were to do the
And
masking.
I'm going back to, we're talking 2-3 weeks of masking here. We're not
Yeah.
talking about till the end of eternity.
Right.
You know, so I'm just asking for a little bit of sacrifice from people if we get to a point. I'm not saying we're at that point.
Right.
But looking at what we went through last year and what's happened here already in, you know, the first week of school. And
And I don't ask to irritate, I just like to know both
I hope
sides.
I'm not,
You know what I
I'll try
mean?
not to come across too
No,
irritated.
no, I just
Go ahead.
always ask so many questions.
But you make a good point. The reason we scheduled every 2 weeks was so that we could reduce as well as increase, you know, the impact.
I'm just telling you, even though it's only 4 kids, doesn't sound like a lot, to me, that's a lot of kids.
Well, it
Just
could
because
lead,
it happened in the classroom, that tells
could
me,
multiply quickly.
and you talk about not testing, we probably have quite a few kids walking the hallways, maybe even a few staff, that are positive,
Oh, we know that.
Yeah.
you know,
There's
and,
no way around it.
yeah, but pretty soon, I don't wanna get to a point where all of a sudden we got 40 8th graders homesick with COVID.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty much the whole class.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
I hope not.
I can guarantee you, Jeff, it ain't gonna happen.
Okay, I want that in writing.
Tony's guaranteed.
No, that's not paper bound.
Paper up, buddy.
All right, let's move on. We're getting wide and in breadth here. All right. I need a motion and a second to approve the updates and revisions to our district safe in-person learning plan as presented, effectively the addition of the testing discussion.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Trask, second by Ellis. Further discussion? Okay, I paused for a moment there. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. I do need also a motion and a second to approve the implementation of the tiered health and safety procedures. Effectively, we've revised it now. We have to implement it as identified in the low, moderate, high levels. And we're moving on to the moderate level at this point. So I need a motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
Alice with a motion, Trask with a second. Is that what I heard?
Perfect.
Okay. Any further discussion there? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Any new business? Any other business? I'm going to adjourn at 7:30. We'll call it for round numbers. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for discussing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way those meetings should go. We're going to do these every 2 weeks. So if people want to come in and discuss, like yourself, and
That's great.
doing it appropriately like that's perfect. I like that discussion.
Like the one that was gonna sign